Welcome back to AWS On Air. We are here on the expo floor. As you can see, everyone's having the time of their lives, roaming the expo, meeting different partners, different groups within AWS, different service teams. It's really exciting, but most exciting, we have more launches to talk about. So, hi, my name is Gigi Behringer. I'm one of your AWS On Air hosts today. I'm here with my dear friend Jasmine. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Jasmine Kiles. I'm also an AWS On Air host, and I work with AWS partners.
Awesome. We, in addition to us, which is super fun, we have two more friends. So can you guys just go down the line, do your thing, tell us what you're here to talk about?
Yeah, absolutely. My name's Doug Clausen. I'm a product manager with Amazon Q, specifically around some of the new agents that we released today.
And my name is Nathan Peck. I'm a senior developer advocate for generative AI at Amazon and a longtime AWS nerd and fanboy.
Yeah,
We love it.
I love it.
You're in good company here today, that's for sure.
This is actually my third Q demo today, so I'm so excited. I'm learning so much about Amazon Q, and then you're like agents, and I'm like, yes, tell me more.
Tell me more. I heard you guys have a demo we got to get going on, so why don't we...
Sure.
I want to see what this looks like. I want to see everything, but I also want you to start telling me what this means.
Yeah.
Just the brief segment while you're pulling it up. I think we're going to share it on screen while you get the demo going, just so we can see the good stuff by the end of the show.
Yeah, and we're here live in the chat, so if you have questions about
Yes.
Amazon Q Developer, let us know.
Please let us know and keep the chat going. We want to hear if you've seen this launch already, if you've played with Q Developer already too.
All right, so we got a demo up here. I have a project here, which I actually just discovered a couple hours ago through a message from Corey Quinn. And I'm going to actually use it for a live demo. And mind you, I didn't write this code. I'm not that familiar with it. So this is going to be exciting. I'm going to show off one of our first agents that we launched. And one of the ones that I love the most, because it's going to save developers a lot of time, that's the /doc documentation generation agent.
Okay.
So I kick this off by clicking create a README. And I can just click yes. I want to create a README for this project because I don't really know what this project is about. And this is going to explore the project and find some things for me. It's going to explain some stuff.
It is going to find definitely a lot of things.
Yep.
Some objects too, maybe.
And I'm going to go ahead and kick that off again. All right. So meanwhile, while that's happening, I'm going to start another panel, and I'm actually going to do test. So we launched multiple agents today. Another one is for writing tests. If I open up a file here, I think I'd do a little reset on this.
As you're resetting, so I'm gonna try to sum this up in one sentence. Today you launched new agents for Amazon Q Developer. The two agents that we're talking about, one is for creating documentation for any code base that you feed into it, and the other is for creating unit testing.
Yes,
and then we have one
more. That is correct.
Yeah, and we have one more as well. We launched another one for doing code reviews. So
nice.
if oftentimes you write code, you get to a PR, and someone's reviewing your PR, your change request for you.
Yes.
Then they find something, and maybe they took them a day to look at that, and then they get it back to you, and there's this big back and forth that goes on. And what we're trying to do with the /review function, which I'm sure Nathan's going to show here shortly, he's probably kicking it off right now.
Yep.
is remove some of that wasted time, right? Let the AI be your first reviewer so that you get a better quality change request or a pull request on the very first shot instead of waiting for that.
That's correct. So I launched 3 agents now that are all working in parallel. The documentation generation agent, the test agent, and the review agent, all working in parallel on this project. And the reason why I love this is because it really goes to show what it's like to work with generative AI. As a developer, I'm not working on just one thing anymore. I'm actually kicking off multiple jobs that are working in parallel, solving these common tasks for me, such as scanning the code, writing documentation files, and writing tests. And so we're starting to see results pop in, even as I speak here.
Yes.
I see my first README popped up. So we went from this very minimalistic README to a very detailed README about this project, which is a what's new bot for social media. It describes all of its key features, repository structure, key files, installation instructions, configuration, how to set the environment variables for this project, the usage, troubleshooting tips, performance optimization, and data flow, which is one of my favorites. I got to make this, since I'm so zoomed in, I can't see very well, but got to make this a little bit bigger so you can actually see it better.
Let's see it.
the data flow diagram of how data flows through this project.
Oh, cool.
So the reason why I love this particular for README is this is way more detailed than I would have written personally as a developer, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And also keeping READMEs up to date is really hard.
Yes.
Documentation is the number one thing that tends to have drift. You add new features to it, and then nobody goes in and
It's a
updates the
pain.
documentation.
It is, in fact, a pain. Can confirm.
So this is the number one big time saver. Like you saw, like less than a minute or two, I had this very detailed README describing this project. Now it doesn't stop there. Let's look at the test agent, because I love this one too. So check this out. Let's scroll through this file, because there is a lot of unit tests in here, and it's a bunch of test cases which realistically I might not have even have thought of all these different test cases. You know, test cases for different malformed inputs, retries, like the failures from the database, or like rate limiting, throttling, all kind of stuff. Totaling, let's see how many lines.
You're gonna give our viewers backwards eyes.
Exactly.
Try to follow the scrolling. That is really cool. I love that this is taking something that we know what you expect the output to be, but it makes it it's a time saver. It's easier. But it's also helping maybe new developers that are joining the group. It's helping the team in general. It's helping the product be more thorough, and helping those that are using it in the future.
Yeah, and that's most importantly, that's 1,000 lines of unit tests I didn't have to type.
Yeah, that's a huge win for everyone.
How familiar would I have to be with like the code repository to use this?
Yeah, you really don't have to be, right? Because you have to be familiar enough that you can review the code and make sure it makes sense.
Yeah.
But what we've noticed here as well is that some of these new features and some of the agents are actually helping people learn about the code base itself, right? Nate said that at the beginning, where he started the /doc run because he didn't know what it did.
Yeah.
And then he can read through the README and he gets a very good summary. And we've realized, as we've been developing these agents, that one of the things that AI is really good at right now is summarizing content, right?
Yes.
So boiling it down to something that you can understand, and then giving you a good history about what has happened. Excuse me.
Yeah.
Do you want to do another one?
Yeah. So I'm kicking one off right now, which is I want to deploy this project on AWS Lambda using SAM CloudFormation. So this is a classic one. A lot of times developers will write the code for a project, but then when it comes time to deploy it, you know, I can run it locally, but now do I have to bring in somebody who has operations experience with the cloud to actually write the infrastructure as code template to get this thing running on AWS? Maybe not. Maybe I can just benefit from the expertise of Amazon Q Developer to get that most of the way there. Get that template fleshed out. It's even got the right IAM permissions, typically. You know, all the resources that it might need to run this, it's explored the code base and figured that out. So I'm able to go from local to running in the cloud much, much faster.
That's very cool.
So
I do have a question. Is that, so you typed in for CloudFormation. Does it work with third-party tooling as well? Yeah. This is not just AWS specific.
Correct.
So this can be a value add no matter what your tooling is.
Yeah, I've tested with Terraform. I've tested with Pulumi. I've tested with Cloud Development Kit. I've tested with actually also just saying write a bash script that calls the AWS CLI. I mean, you'd be surprised. Like, these things work.
Yeah. Mr. Unreasonable in the chat says effortless documentation is always a plus.
Yeah, we agree.
So while that's running in the background, because it can take a second, I want to show for a really complex application. This is a generative AI game that I've been working on. It's kind of a fun concept. The idea is that you can fish these random junk items out of an interdimensional portal, and you can craft with them, and they all have quirky images. Which, by the way, I was testing. These are generated by the new Nova Canvas model. As of about 10 minutes ago, I made that update using Amazon Q Developer.
Very cool.
So these images were generated by Nova. Well, I kicked off another change to my project, which was that I want the items to have a new field that keeps track of which equipment slots they can be equipped into. And depending on which slot the item is equipped, there should be a fun, quirky effect on the person who's wearing the item. So it says display these slot effects in the client side and total them up on the equipment page. So here, this is a very high-level description of a complex feature across an application that has a client-side game client. It has a server which calls out to LLM services. There's clearly a lot of complexity here. And Amazon Q Developer does a multi-step iterative process of thinking through how to solve this problem. And this is complex because there's many files in this project. And implementing this feature requires modifying many of those files. So you can see this multi-step thoughts as it works through, okay, there's an equipment window, there's storage for items, a state store, there's a schema and generation logic that needs to be updated. There's a handler for moving items. Maybe I need to check to see whether an item is allowed to be equipped into a certain equipment slot. And I need to update template formatting and integrate to handle the slots properly. So here you can see it reviewed not just one file that was currently open, but 8 different files. It created a new file. It changed 5 files. And as a result, I have this large and complex diff that is across both the client side, adding new features, as well as on the server side, adding new things like this check to see whether a particular item could be allowed to be equipped. Like if it doesn't look like it could be equipped on my head, don't let me do that.
Yeah.
It even modified the prompt here. So this is the prompt that I use to generate items. Okay. So it's added a new ability to calculate which slot it could be equipped in, and quirky effects such as it has some example head. Makes you 10% more likely to come up with dad jokes. Or hands. Grants +2 to rock, paper, scissors game. So to be completely frank, I don't know whether this diff would work out of the box, but you can see that it's more than 80% of the way there in terms of adding this complex feature across both the client and the server side in something that's more than just like a simple project. Now, for a simple project, there is a very high success rate on that.
Okay.
And you can see, for example, the CloudFormation template, serverless transform here. This is for the other project that got kicked off. And it's created resources. It's also created instructions here on how to use SAM CLI to deploy this. It's made changes to this project. And I love how easy it is to go from a requirement or an idea to working code that's been actually deployed by
I also love that for my own personal gain. That makes my PM job easier to better understand what's going on, maybe, and then also be able to play around with it and understand what's going on now that I'm further away from my CS degree. I do want to hear. So, as a PM, I know a lot of our features are driven by customer requests. What are you hearing from customers on Q Developer in general, and then also these specific agents that you're adding? How are you deciding which agents to add next, and what's that process like?
Yeah, our goal here with Q Developer is to really remove undifferentiated work and let developers focus on the more creative and critical aspects of software development. And so the reason we release these agents is strictly for that, right? Can you imagine, keeping tests up to date or keeping documentation up to date? Yeah. Nathan showed, multiple of the agents that we had running today. And again, our goal is how do we remove that work and let other people get more time back to do more things? I know we all have backlogs. I know we do. Backlogs full of things. And as you go through sprint planning, you're like, man, I can't do these 5 things that I really wanted to do because we're out of capacity. Imagine you could assign some of that work to an agent to get done, or you simply remove some of the work you were already doing around documentation or unit tests. And so you're basically buying yourself time back. So I'd say that's the things that customers are most excited about, is how do we help them enable their developers to sort of move faster through this process. So.
Yeah, it's enabling more productivity essentially. People are saying, and even in the comments here, like, hey, I don't like writing documentation.
And that is exactly why we focused on that. Yeah. We focus on the parts of the process that people don't like. Yeah. Because AI doesn't care, right? It will do whatever you tell it to do, and so we can focus on the things that we don't want to do. Another area that we won't talk about today that we did launch another feature was around Q investigations, so helping you debug your applications. And that's another area, like we have on-calls here that don't like doing on-call work, right? So, we get to help the on-calls or help developers who are running applications keep those applications running and or debug them more quickly. So we're really excited just overall for agents and where agents will go in terms of helping development teams ship faster, and that's our real goal here.
It's amazing.
And I think it's not even just about shipping faster. I think it's also shipping higher quality code too. Yeah. Like the number of times I've worked on a project and there was a refactor that I would like to accomplish, but didn't have time to do it. And I think about like the developers that are traditionally called like the 10x developers, the people who are magically somehow 10 times more productive than anybody else. They're usually the ones who manage to figure out how to slip in refactors into other features they're developing. or they're planning ahead and they're reworking how a feature works in preparation for the other feature. And because of this planning and because of the fact that they slip in these other side refactors, they're able to reach higher productivity, which produces better quality code, which actually saves them time and allows them to iterate faster. Well, I think that generative AI is a tremendous tool for that because it lowers the barrier to doing significant refactors.
Yeah,
You can
definitely.
take a piece of code and you can ask it to be rewritten according to whatever instructions you want. And there's less of a scariness factor to that because it can be working in the background while you're actually working on something else. And so you ask for it to do a refactor and you're like, yeah, I don't know whether this refactor is a good idea or not, but I'll let the AI work on that while I work on this other task, and I'll check back in and see, oh, wow, okay.
Is it a good idea?
Yeah, it's a good idea.
I know Matt Garman during his keynote, he called out how we are using it at Amazon and AWS specifically to do some modernizations on some old code.
Mm-hmm.
How would that apply in, someone else's environment if they're a customer?
Exactly the same way.
Yeah.
The same stuff. This is what's so great about us having Amazon as a large customer is they get to be some of our first customers on some of these technologies, right? And so we've gotten really good feedback around it from our internal builder tools teams on how these agents are helping and how they see them helping in the future as well. So exactly the same way.
Yeah.
These things are available for other customers to use as well.
Yeah.
That's a pretty awesome first customer set to say the least. Get through all the initial bugs. So I do want to know, how are you guys recommending people get started with this? Like, if someone is saying, I keep hearing about Q Developer, I keep hearing about your launches, because there's been so many cool launches this year. We've had you on AWS OnAir a handful of times at least, right? So what are you saying? Like, what's the first thing to start with? Is it the documentation agent and just see if that looks good? Is it the README, or is it something, I guess, smaller that they can work into a bigger?
Yeah, usually the adoption pattern we typically see with customers is they start with something that's a little bit more high touch, right? Mm-hmm. These agents are typically not high touch, meaning you set it off, it goes towards a goal, it seeks the goal, it comes back with a response.
Yep.
We typically see customers using, an inline completions, like, they type a comment, they get a function in a single file, or they use the chat capabilities because it allows them to start building an understanding of how the system's working. And then they get comfortable with it, they start building trust with the system, and that's when we see them start exploring some of the more advanced features like the agents we're showing you here today. That's not to say you can't jump straight to agents, but we typically see that at sort of adoption pattern moving through sort of high-touch features. The other thing I would say is just try it. Like, the more you work it into what you do in your daily job, the more you will end up using it, and so you'll find value in how you apply it. And I think that's probably the other most important thing. Do you want to add something, Nathan?
I would say that the tip that I have is, if you want to get started, go install the Amazon Q extension inside of your IDE. Probably Visual Studio Code. That's the one that I know is very popular with a lot of people. It's the one I use most often. And start out by asking some questions over in the chat. You'll see on the right hand side there's a chat there. And this is a great way to get started because it's almost very familiar to what I would do as a software developer when I plug a question into a web search engine. Yeah. But the results tend to be better because they're contextualized to the actual code that I have open. And so when I type in a question about like how to code this particular algorithm, how to solve this problem, it will actually reference the code methods and the variable names that are in the code file that I have open. And so it's a huge time saver. And I consider this to be sort of like level 1. I go straight from like web search to contextualized answers that are generated specific to my code by generative AI. And then from there, you start to trust it more and you start to ask it to generate more code and it'll generate diffs that you can insert in. You can start to select code inline in your code editor and press the command or control I to open an inline chat prompt and ask it to refactor something or change variable names or do something along those lines, right?
Yeah. One of the coolest things about the features we showed you today is they're all available in the free tier too, so you don't even have to pay for it. You can go try it. And maybe you'll find out you love it and you want to try it, and then you'll start paying for it. But you can try everything we showed today strictly on the free tier and try it out.
And I think that's something for all of our viewers that are with us today. Always try the free tier. The free tier, you said it yesterday, is the best tier. Try the free tier. You can play around with it. There's no harm, no foul, and
Yeah.
you can get more comfortable with it, get excited about it, and then make the right decision about whether it's a good fit for you.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that has been awesome. That is
Yes.
all the time that we have. Max does DevOps. We see you in the chat, and we
Yes.
want you to go check this out in Amazon Q Developer. Go do the free tier and get some of those answers to the questions, but if not, reach out to us. All right. Well, hey, if you haven't already, go ahead and take our survey. We have some free AWS credits for you for completing that survey if you're one of the first 100 people, and we have more from repos coming up after this.